Greetings and merry meet. When was the last time that you were on a quest? Not just any quest, one that involves finding treasure and an element of danger, something life-changing. Well, my guest today has been on that quest, and the treasure involved seeing every species of penguin in the world in their natural habitat. And the takeaway was a lifetime of memories and breathtaking images. I'm Dr. Kathryn Bingham, founder of LeadUP, a veteran and women-owned small business. I work with executives, not entrepreneurs and professionals, to elevate their leadership, help them reinvent, pivot, change their life, change their work, change the world. And I'm also the author of Driving Pink. But today we have Charles Bergman, an extraordinary photographer, author of multiple books, including, let me show you, Every Penguin in the World, The Quest to See Them All, and emeritus professor of the Department of English at Pacific Lutheran University. And we also have Susan Mann, leadership coach, facilitator, consultant, and she's also Charles' beloved and fellow quester and co-author of A Penguin Told Me a Secret. So Charles, Susan, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, delighted to be with you, Kathryn.
Awesome. So I started with the question of whether our audience had recently engaged in a quest. So Charles, Susan, tell us a bit about the journey that led to Every Penguin in the World.
It was a journey that developed out of small parts into a kind of organic whole. It began because we just like to have fun adventures in the wild, go to cool distant places and see cool animals. And we saw a few penguins, and that gradually snowballed into realizing that there was something really important here for each of us individually and for the two of us together, something that we just couldn't try to carry on to the finish. And that was seeing all 18 species of penguins in the wild.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, when you go through the book, it's clear that it was a profound journey, right? And the moments, there was the rescue facility and holding babies, and there's the penguin who approached to converse, and there's the experience in the river, a little wild and woolly there.
Right.
So share a story that helps our viewers and listeners know why seeing every penguin was so important.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you want to go ahead?
Yeah, maybe I can tell a story. You alluded to the story I want to tell, because it's one of the most powerful stories really of my life, which was we had taken a trip to go to a place called South Georgia Island. It's one of the most remote islands in the world. We had not been there obviously before and didn't know entirely what to expect. It turns out to be one of the most beautiful islands ever. It's just spectacular. And one morning we were up early. Before breakfast, we would go ashore, which means getting off the ship. We were in a ship, and it was anchored in St. Andrews Bay on the island, a real wild spot. We would get off the ship, take Zodiacs ashore, and just mingle with the penguins. It's a spectacular, you know, there are hundreds of thousands of king penguins, which are about 3 feet tall, beautiful dark plumage with golden orange highlights in their chest and head and beak. And I saw this scene that I thought was really cool, and I wanted to photograph it. Snow-capped mountains reflected in a small pond on the plain, on the beach, the plain right behind the beach, with lots of penguins around it, and the penguins were also reflected in the water. So I thought that was a beautiful scene of wild beauty, and I wanted to photograph it. I got down and I crawled toward the penguins on my tummy. I really kind of like a little dragon, a little lizard, and got really close. They'll let you get quite close, and I was photographing them, and that was terrific. And then I realized something was pecking at my boots, and I turned around, and there was a king penguin that was right next to me, and checking me out. And he pecked at my boots, and then he kind of moved up and pulled at my jacket, then came right around to my face and looked down at me. And they have these long beaks, and it was for a moment I thought, oh, I hope he doesn't try that with my nose or something. But instead, what he did is he just started calling. They kind of lean, go up very upright, point their heads to the sky, beaks straight up, and you can see their chest pumping as they give this really hoarse, loud call. Something like that. And I was really taken aback for a second. And then I realized that he was talking to me. He was quite literally talking to me. And I knew what he was saying. That was the really cool thing. I really knew what he was saying. Because scientists have discovered that these penguins nest in huge colonies, hundreds of thousands of birds. It's spectacular and overwhelming. And they'll go out to fish and they'll come back, and they don't have nests. They carry their eggs on their feet. So they'll leave an egg with the mate and go out to fish and come back and bring food for the mate, or just switch off. The question is, how do they know where, for example, their mate might be, or the chick if they're feeding a chick? Because they can wander through this whole huge metropolis of penguins. And the way they do it is that their call is unique to themselves. Each penguin has its own unique sound. So when they're doing that, they're saying, this is me. It's an identity call, and they can find each other. To us, it sounds like just this overwhelming cacophony, but to them, it's individual penguins announcing who they are to each other. And that's what the penguin was doing to me, and the penguin was expecting me to answer him. It was a call to identity, and that was just such an amazing moment that it was like the doorway into the world of penguins for me.
I love that. You know, Susan, you've worked with Brene Brown Education and Research Group and Bill and Melinda Gates's foundation, and you now serve as an executive coach and facilitator. So what maybe are some of the lessons from the journey that you bring into your own work?
Yeah, it's a very thoughtful question. And you know, from your description of your work and what I've read on your website, there are certain similarities in what you and I do professionally, which is really wonderful. One of the things that is important, it's certainly part of our quest and part of what we've learned from the Penguin Quest, is also very important in the leadership world, which is being curious and taking risks, having a sense of adventure. You know, that's one of the paths to being more innovative, for example, in our workplaces.
That's right.
In our organizations, right? Being open, kind of looking for new experiences and stepping into the unknown. One of my personal mottos is do what's uncomfortable and discover what's possible. And certainly some of our experiences were uncomfortable in certain ways on the Penguin Quest over all of those years. And, you know, it also applies in the work world and for each of us as individuals, that place where we're feeling a bit uncomfortable, where we're sticking our neck out, where we're taking a bit of risk, that's the place where we're learning, right?
Yes.
Where we're experimenting. We don't learn when we're in our comfort zone. We grow, we learn when we are on an adventure, when we're stepping into that place of the unknown, right? When we get out of our comfort zone, that's the place where we can learn new skills and develop new insights.
I like that. I like that. And it's so true. Now, one of the things that I really love about your site is that you integrate art and the watercolors that are on your website and your profile imagery. What inspires you the most?
Yeah, thanks. About the watercolor or
any of the above?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, my mom was a real source of inspiration artistically. I mean, I'm very much, although I've been practicing and learning watercolors for probably 25 years now, I'm still very much a learner and a beginner. My mom was a, air quotes, real artist with a master's in fine arts degree from the University of Washington, and she worked professionally as an artist and a writer for many years. And we used to love to do watercolor paintings together.
Ooh,
It
nice.
was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from her. And certainly for me, watercolor painting is a great example of, you know, do what's uncomfortable and discover what's possible.
Mhm.
I love color. I love kind of vibrancy in a variety of ways, including with color. And watercolor is a super unpredictable medium, which is also fascinating to me. I think, you know, the other thing for me about doing anything creatively, whether it's watercolor painting or for Charles, his photography, is that it gets us out of our brains and more connected with our kind of spirit and with emotion. So certainly there's knowledge that we have to have to support the skill. And when you're in the moment of Charles photographing a beautiful landscape or a scene of penguins, or me working on a watercolor painting, it's very much a right brain activity, and you're just in that creative moment, fully present.
I think sometimes we lose that mindfulness and presence with the noise of the world around us a lot. So I think that's really helpful for people. You know, Charles, you've written other books, and they have environmental themes to them. So I'm just going to mention some titles so that our viewers and listeners can know: Orion's Legacy, Wild Echoes, Red Delta. And you've captured species beyond the penguins. So for example, on your website, or maybe it was no, I'm sure it was your website, I saw the hyacinths, and I love macaws. I mean, I used to have a blue and gold, and I dearly love them. And I know how vulnerable they are to extinction. And so when you think about all of the complexity that there is to make changes, make a difference, and your book has this underlying theme to help people come to that realization, you know, maybe there's something I can do. What is a decision or an action that you hope your readers, you hope viewers and listeners to conversations like these, what do you hope they would embrace to begin maybe changing that trajectory of our more vulnerable species?
Thanks. This is a really important question, and it couldn't be more urgent, in my view. Every year we see increasing signs of the importance of figuring out one really important matter, and that is, how are we going to sustain ourselves on this planet and the rest of the creatures that we are here on this planet with? The world has suffered through a heat apocalypse over the last summer. Europe has been on fire. The west coast of the United States is on fire. Europe has set heat records every single day in parts of the summer. Rivers are drying up in Europe. The Loire River, which cuts through the beautiful valley of Renaissance palaces in France, is dry. The Colorado River, which I wrote about in Red Delta, is evaporating in front of us in this years-long mega drought that we're going through. Lake Mead is down to 30% capacity. Water managers are talking about dead pool in the reservoirs of the Colorado River. Dead pool means the water is so low in the reservoir that it no longer flows. Millions of people depend on the water in the Colorado River. Well, the earth could not be speaking to us more directly and more loudly. Something needs to happen. And if anything could happen that would make me feel like my work mattered more, it would be that readers would begin to pay attention to the world they live in. That's all it really requires. Just pay attention to the world we live in and make contact. And that's where the transformation begins and new habits begin to form. It's up to each of us. It's up to each of us. It's policy, of course, global policy, but it's also very personal. And it has simply to do with how we want to live in the world.
And I know, one of the things that you were talking about with the penguins in your writing is, that we're fishing, we're getting all of the krill, right? And the krill, there's this dependency, there's the food chain dependency. So how do the penguins get food, and how do the, and if they don't have food, well, then what happens to the next species and the whales as well, so, and then I go to Costco and I don't want to throw them under the bus because I like Costco, but the idea is you see all of the bottles of substances that people are like, oh, well, if I take this, I will feel better at fill in the blank. And yet I don't think we make that connection, that if I source that from this part of the food chain instead of the other natural sources that my body might have got it from previously, right? We're trying to take this shortcut. So what's my part in making that choice that impacts species other than myself, right? So there's buying decisions that we're making because these mega producers are creating products that are touted as, fill in the blank. So I don't know. I don't know what the answers are to all of that, but those are questions we need to pose, I think.
Right.
Well, you want to say?
Yeah, just one thing there. It's super important what Charles said and what you're offering here, Kathryn. And it can feel really overwhelming.
Yeah.
As a person who cares about the natural world, wild animals, who's paying attention to what's happening, which Charles encouraged us to do and we must do, it can feel overwhelming. Where do I start? How can I make a difference? And as you said, policy matters, using our voices to, write a letter or call politicians and, say, this matters, I want you to vote this way or whatever. That's important, asking for change at that policy level and looking at what can we do in our own individual lives. Part of what you're alluding to there with the shopping is really asking the question, where did that product come from? Right? What's the source? And what kind of, transportation was required to get that product to the grocery store, as an example, or what was used in terms of pesticides, versus trying to go more organic. I mean, one of the things that can be done is just decide, like, I'm going to go meat free one day a week, be a vegan one day a week or whatever. So I think my encouragement is pay attention to the original source of products that we're buying, use our voices, with government officials, with policymakers. And 3, think about one small change that you can sustain in your eating habits, like a meat-free day once a week, or some other way of beginning to incorporate kind of earth-friendly habits into the way you're living.
And I think there's plenty of simple things out there. I think that people are not, our advertising behemoth would, in the Western culture, would suggest that that's not the way to go. So we have to make changes and choices that also help our companies that are providing products to us know that these are the things that we want. And I also think you hit on something else that I think is of a benefit too, is can we question where something is coming from? And the whole shop local mentality is a really helpful
Right.
way to approach shopping. And we have a grocery chain here in the Carolinas, which most people would be familiar with the name, but they might not know the story, but it's Lowe's Foods. And it's the same family originally that had Lowe's Hardware. There's a story there. I won't go into it because it's a Lowe's story, but Lowe's Foods sources their products to the extent possible all from the Carolinas. So they're trying to provide products that are regional in a way that, again, reduces transportation cost, makes it fresher, makes it, there's health consciousness, there's how do they invest into the region in a way that creates sustainability for agriculture and folks who raise livestock, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that we can think about how do we make choices around what are we going to buy and how are we going to buy it that impacts choices that producers will make, that impacts choices that policymakers can make. So I think we do have a voice. We just have to learn better how to approach using it and expressing ourselves.
This is a leadership question.
It is. And we just had Sirius, who is making his voice known.
Good.
Sorry about that.
He agrees with what we're saying.
He does. He's very vocal. And normally he's much more quiet when he's in the office, but he's decided no, something's going on outside. So one of the things that I'm going to do is pause for a minute, because I'm going to ask the folks who are participating by watching or listening a question for themselves. So here's the question that if you're reviewing our conversation today, what I'd like you to think about is, if time and money and resources were not an object, what quest would you go on? So you put that down in the comments below, right? I read each and every one. I will respond to you. The system tells me that you've put a note there, and I will come back and I will comment on your comment. So thank you for doing that. Now, Charles, Susan, while they are adding their thoughts or comments, tell us something that the audience won't learn by checking your bios or your social profiles. So Susan, let's start with you.
Oh my gosh, wow. I'm thinking about what is interesting that might not be on my website or LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't think I have this out there on social media. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, born very close in age. My parents had 5 of us in only 6 years.
Wow.
And so my next youngest sibling is about 15 months younger than me. And I sometimes say jokingly, I was a boss from the time I was 15 months old and she was born. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely an oldest child.
Awesome.
Trying to unlearn some of those oldest child attributes. I've been working on that for a long time.
I love it. I love it. Charles, how about you? What would surprise our audience or our viewers today?
Well, let me just say, she's also married to an older child.
Right, which occasionally leads to headbutting. I'm the boss of you. No, I'm the boss of you.
Well, this is no secret about me, but you won't find it really on social media. I have a PhD in English literature and in the English Renaissance, and I did a dissertation in graduate school for my doctorate on 16th century poetry. And
Ooh.
so people who go to my website or who know me as an environmental writer and photographer are frequently shocked to discover that my training is in classical literature. I have almost a master's degree in Latin, and yeah, taught Shakespeare for 40 years.
I love it. I love it. I took Latin in junior high school. And it was a choice. And people were like, why did you do that? I'm like, you don't understand. You learn the roots of languages by studying languages. So
Yeah, I love language. I wanted to say that this question of how we behave kind of ethically in the world on a daily basis with decisions in shopping and eating, it's also a leadership question because we have leaders. We need to lead the leaders, I think, at this point, because they haven't really caught up with what's going on in the world. Our politics is so immersed in things that in the larger framework of what's going on with the planet seem a little ridiculous at times. And I think one of the things we can do is use our voices individually as that is a kind of leadership moment.
Yes, right.
And try to affect really the leaders as well. So
I agree. And I think the thing that what we try to do often is, especially if you come from the academic community, the phrase or the word discourse, right? Like we don't have to have dialogue, we need discourse. We need to engage in a way that we're listening and we're paying attention, and that we can find appreciation for someone else's thinking and be open to new ideas for ourselves as we're listening to what someone else has to say. And I think that we've become so polarized. And yet, if we would go back to learning this art of discourse, the conversation needs to transcend that polarization.
Right.
Right. There's so much here that we need to take in, and we don't have a lot of time to begin making these kinds of changes, both individually and collectively, be that collectively in a region, in a state, in a nation, in our global communities. We must make decisions that are going to be profoundly different, or we're not going to survive as a species. I think we just have a lot of opportunity to make different changes. So
may I say one more thing?
you may actually, I was going to invite you to make any final thoughts before we close out. So you may say anything that you would like. You're the guest.
Thanks. Often environmentalism or an attention to the ecology of the planet seems to be like guilt tripping people. People feel like they're being guilt tripped, made to feel guilty about the state of things, or made to feel like they're going to be asked to sacrifice. And this penguin quest for us wasn't about sacrifice. It wasn't about guilt. It was about something that I'll refer to the Mary Oliver poem to try to make it clear. A poem that we had read at our wedding. It's Wild Geese. And the poem begins, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to repent, crawling on your knees for 100 miles. What do you have to do?" She says, "You have only to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." The world's calling to us. We're being invited to really open up ourselves to the things we love.
Mhm.
and to try to find what most matters to us, and to follow that. That's the compass. That's the direction.
Yeah.
That's the way you find your way forward.
Right. And to care for the things we love.
And then, yeah, then you, in a world in a world so deeply threatened, yeah, if you love something, you want to protect it.
Mhm.
But the heart of it is to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
That's a good one to sit with. So what I want to do now is just, first of all, thank you so much for your time. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to either view or listen to our conversation with Charles, Susan, and I. If this is your first time viewing a LeadUP conversation, I would ask that you subscribe to the channel so that you know when that next awesome conversation comes up for you, as well as follow along, because you'll learn some opportunities to grow your leadership and live for today, not someday. And I want to give you a few ways to reach out and connect with Charles and Susan. They have websites. So charlesbergman.com and Susan Mann, that's man with 2 N's.com. And all of these links will be in the video description. So you will be able to get at them. The email, the Instagram profile handles, and Facebook links will all be there, as well as the Amazon link so that you can get every penguin in the world, the quest to see them all. And there will also be the link to Charles' author page so that you can see the other books. So I did mention A Penguin Told Me a Secret that is co-authored by Susan and Charles. Orion's Legacy, A Cultural History of Man as Hunter, Wild Echoes, Encounters with the Most Endangered Animals in North America, and Red Delta, Fighting for Life at the End of the Colorado River. So you'll find access to those through the links in the video description. So with that, with one more thank you, I want to encourage you to go forth and do great things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
And